Since childhood, every book and game he owned belonged to fantasy. He was drawn to worlds of swords and magic. When a story was set in that kind of world, he could remain awake for days, absorbed in seeing it through. His name was Shinaren, a fourth-year university student. While playing, the game displayed a notification confirming that it had been cleared and asked whether the clear time should be saved to the server. He selected yes. He lifted his hand in quiet satisfaction at reaching the end. The possibility crossed his mind that the clear time might rank among the fastest in the world. Most of his days were spent preparing for employment. This weekend was an exception, deliberately set aside for a long-awaited new release, The Legend of the Seven Heroes 2. It was the second entry in a fantasy role-playing series that had already gained worldwide popularity. The premise followed a familiar structure, centered on a school and the descendants of heroes who had once defeated the Demon King. The story progressed through battles against those attempting to revive the Demon King. However, the second installment introduced an unprecedented development. The hero's closest companion killed a young girl known as a saint, throwing the kingdom into turmoil. Many mysteries remained unresolved. In the end, the Emperor issued an order for the hero to subjugate his former friend. The remainder of the story was left for the third installment. Meanwhile, Ren scrolled through comments about the game on his phone. From what he could see, other players had already finished the story as well. Doubt began to form over whether the friend was truly the mastermind. He picked up the controller again, deciding to replay the entire game for now, while also considering the possibility that a hidden skill might exist. The game displayed a prompt asking whether a special story should be started using the Demon Sword summoning skill. He paused, searching his memory for any character who might have used such a skill. After a brief moment, he selected yes. Immediately, something out of the ordinary occurred. His surroundings were suddenly swallowed by light. Strength left his body and he was unable to move. Then, he disappeared. When awareness returned, an elderly woman stood before him, examining him and noting his vitality. She sought confirmation from another woman nearby, who affirmed the observation, showing relief and hope that he would grow up safely. Ren struggled to grasp what he was witnessing. He soon realized that he had awakened as a baby, lying in a tub filled with water. His vision remained unfocused, and his body refused to respond as he intended. He tried to understand the situation, unable to determine whether this was a dream or reality. Then a memory resurfaced, the game's prompt about beginning the special story with the Demon Sword summoning skill. At that moment, he fixated on the phrase special story, unable to accept it. The situation felt impossible, yet a quiet part of him considered whether this was simply how fantasy worlds functioned. The idea formed that he might have been transmigrated. As that thought settled, the elderly woman lifted him and turned toward his mother, raising the matter of his name. It had already been decided. He was placed into his mother's arms, and his name was given as Len Ashtant. That name existed within the legend of the Seven Heroes too. It belonged to the one who would later bring chaos to the world, the former closest companion who betrayed the main hero, a dangerous figure suspected of being the enemy's mastermind. Len could only accept it as some kind of error. He could not understand why he had been placed inside the game at all. Despite his original name and this one sharing the same sound, he had no connection to that character. The question remained, heavy and unavoidable, as to why it had to be him. Several years later, Len began practicing swordsmanship with his father. During training, his father knocked him down and pointed out that jumping without purpose only created openings. Len accepted the correction without resistance. While Len remained on the ground, his father checked his condition and brought the training for the day to an end. Len expressed his thanks. Len admitted that he could not move his body. His father dismissed the concern and acknowledged his effort, noting that Len's movements were far beyond what would be expected of a 7-year-old. Spring had arrived. Time had passed quickly, and more than 7 years had gone by since Len was transmigrated. The setting was the Leomel Empire, a Western military nation on the Elfin continent, in one of its unnamed villages. At first, the situation had been a shock. In the beginning, Len struggled to accept reality. After spending half a year living in the body of a baby, that resistance gradually faded. Since then, he had kept his status as a transmigrator hidden from his parent. One day, something appeared from his wrist, known as a status screen. Unlike a game interface, it displayed no level, physical strength, magic power, or attack strength. To Len, this absence made it feel more realistic. However, he had never heard of the skill called demon sword summoning. There were also skills referred to as hidden skills, tied to a grinding process. In a second playthrough, 3 existing skills could be combined to create a new, original skill. There were also unique skills, abilities limited to specific individuals. As Len examined the status screen, he recognized that demon sword summoning belonged to this category. At that moment, a sword rose from the ground. At present, Len was only able to summon the demon sword of wood. It was small, and the result left him unsatisfied. According to the description, proficiency in demon sword summoning increased through repeated summoning and use of the weapon. As that proficiency rose, the sword's capabilities would continue to develop. One listed ability allowed limited use of natural magic attack. In practice, this meant manipulating plant growth for combat purposes. Len understood that this was not something he could attempt inside his room. By fulfilling certain special conditions, the number of demon sword types he could summon would increase. Even if both the demon sword of wood and the demon sword summoning technique were raised to level 2, the next sword to be unlocked would still be the demon sword of metal. Each summoning consumed the magic power within his body. If that power was exhausted, it would result in a severe headache. In the worst case, he could lose consciousness. To avoid that outcome, Len needed to train every day and steadily build his magic power. If this were a game, easier methods of raising levels would exist. As that idea crossed his mind, his father arrived and checked whether he was already awake. Len was startled and immediately dispelled the status screen. His father lifted him up. The existence of this power clearly connected his situation to the game. That meant there was a future that had to be avoided at all costs. Even if the worst were to occur, Len resolved that, for his own protection, he had to begin training his magic power immediately. At the same time, he needed to learn as much as possible about the world he now lived in. Len was now 7 years old. When his father returned from hunting, Len welcomed him back. His father suggested that it was time for Len to begin sword practice, and told him to choose a wooden practice sword from the storeroom. Len was pleased and accepted. His father instructed him to attack with everything he had. Len was confused at first. His father explained that he had never taught swordsmanship before and that this was how his own father had trained him. Len accepted the explanation. Without revealing it, Len was using the demon sword of the wood element secretly. He signaled that he was ready to begin. Len dashed forward and attacked. His father avoided the strike and pressed him to continue until his body could no longer move. Len kept attacking. The body Len inhabited possessed surprising physical strength, but it was still the body of a 7-year-old. He could not last even 30 minutes in his first session. Len collapsed to the ground, completely exhausted. His father acknowledged that he had done well for a beginner. Len expressed his thanks and asked his father to head home first, stating that he would return once he had recovered enough energy. His father agreed and told him that he would return for him later. Once he was alone, Len checked the status screen. His proficiency had increased, the result of using the demon sword of wood. From that day on, his routine settled into a steady pattern. He studied in the morning, then trained with the sword alongside his father in the afternoon. The demon stone, an item taken from a monster's body, was also meant to play a role. Although Len could raise his proficiency with the demon sword, the stone his father had given him showed no reaction. It appeared that it would only respond to one he hunted himself. In short, unlike the legend of the 7 heroes, nothing was being made easy for him. Len understood that this meant he had to take everything seriously. Before long, another month passed. Len and his father were training once again. During practice, his father noted that Len's movements had improved compared to before. Then, without warning, his father charged in. Len was corrected for losing his balance too easily. He was advised to focus more strength at his waist before being taken down. His father checked on him and brought the day's training to an end. Len refused to stop, insisting that he could continue and asking for just a little more. His father cautioned him against pushing himself too hard, warning that doing so would only lead to injury. He pointed out that Len was already training at his limit every day and acknowledged his effort. As Len got back on his feet, his father told him to rest before dinner and walked away. Len expressed his thanks. When Len checked the status screen again, he saw the result of his persistence. Only a few more days were needed before the demon sword summoning technique leveled up, with its progress now at level 1, 88 out of 100. Len lay down on the ground to rest, a faint smile on his face. Even after pushing himself past his limits every day, his progress increased by only 2 points at a time. Seen as a step toward leveling up, it did not feel unbearable, perhaps because of his perspective as a gamer. Lately, however, training had begun to feel a little more engaging. At home, his mother, Milieu, gently held his hand. She noticed another blister and remarked on how, despite his fine hands, the training continued to wear them down. She added that the regimen might be too harsh, noting that his father, devoted to physical discipline, tended to push too far. Len reassured her that it was fine. He said that he enjoyed learning more about swordsmanship. Milieu acknowledged his words. The Ashton family had long been a line of knights who protected the village, and she found Len's affection for the sword admirable. Curious, Len asked whether she disliked swords. She explained that it was not dislike, but fear. When he pressed for what she meant, she told him that even when his father had been young, swords had consumed his every thought. He had been a courageous warrior, fearing neither battle nor monsters, and had saved her many times. Yet, she admitted, a persistent worry had always lingered, that the very bravery that defined him might one day become a curse, and that the trait she admired could also be the reason he would be gravely hurt. Even the thought of it filled her with fear. Len falls silent. His mother continues, saying that she holds the deepest respect for her husband. The monsters he hunts provide their family with steady income, and the meat can even be shared with the other villagers. At that moment, her husband appears from behind. He tells her not to worry, adding that he is strong and will not be brought down by the monsters in this area. He says that he is far more careful than he was in the past, and that his family's happiness matters more to him than anything else. Milieu is moved by his words. That night, Len lies in his bedroom, thinking about family. In his previous life, his parents had divorced early, and he had gone with his mother. As the years passed, their conversations grew fewer. By the time he became an adult, she no longer came home. Len feels grateful that she had still allowed him to go to university. Perhaps there had been things he never understood back then. With those thoughts, he falls asleep. Morning comes and Len trains with his father again. He collapses to the ground once more, and his father says they will continue tomorrow. Len agrees. Evening follows, then sleep, and then another morning. Compared to before, Len feels more fulfilled with each passing day. His routine repeats. Sit-ups with his father's assistance, sword practice, study from books, and dinner with his family. Another morning arrives. During training, he falls to the ground again. His father checks on him and calls a halt for the day. As Len starts to rise, he refuses, insisting that he can continue. Then he senses something different. His father notices at once and asks what is wrong, wondering if he has hurt himself. Len shakes his head and says it's nothing, though he notices his body feels lighter. He announces that he is starting, then dashes toward his father with speed and strikes. His father is taken aback. He is shocked not only by Len's speed but also by the sudden strength behind the attack. Excited, he urges Len to do it again, to charge without pause. Len agrees. He attacks again, moving even faster this time. Len himself can hardly believe it. His speed, the power in his arms, everything feels sharper, stronger. As they exchange strikes, his father wonders what just happened. His son has grown stronger in an instant. Then, with one strike, Len breaks his father's wooden sword in half. His father exclaims in surprise, starting to realize something, but before he can finish, he dodges Len's next attack, lifts him into the air, and praises him. He beams with pride, recognizing that Len has become a skill-bearer. Milieu asks what has happened. His father replies that, without a skill himself, he cannot be certain, but it seems Len's training has caused his skill to level up. There is no other explanation for such a sudden increase in strength. Len realizes that the next level of his ability, physical ability up, small, has activated. His father declares that he had known it would happen. Len should not remain tied to this small village. He should go to the capital and make a name for himself as a knight. Len is startled by this. Milieu remarks that it is impressive and wonders what the skill might be. Len's father adds that if they had the money, they could go to the town church immediately to confirm it. Len shrugs and says there is no need. Not knowing the skill's name will not harm him, and he does not see a reason to check. His father asks whether he is serious, noting that most children would be eager to know. His mother adds that he seems a little too indifferent. Len answers that there are their rules, and there are his. Privately, he understands why. A rare skill called demon sword summoning is something even his father has never heard of, and revealing it would only invite trouble. His parents fall silent. Len says that, if possible, he wants to live peacefully and quietly in this village. He tells his father that rather than becoming a famous knight, he wishes to succeed him here. By hunting monsters together, they could increase their income and help the village prosper. And if the worst were ever to happen, he could protect his father. In these past 7 years, he has been happier than he ever was in his previous life, and that it is all because of the two of them. Deep down, he knows that he is no longer the person he once was. As Len, a new person has been born. He tells his father that all he wants is for the three of them to live long lives together. His father is left without words. His father embraces him, and his mother joins them. The three hold each other, and his father tells him not to be such a child. To Len, this is like a second playthrough. This time, he will cherish the time he has with his family. To prevent the future of despair, he will live a life different from the one Len followed in the game. Yet these hopes will be cut short in only a few years. In the future, he will meet the girl he was never meant to meet, and the one he is meant to kill. He will face a changing future and an unreasonable destiny. But the Len of this moment knows nothing of what lies ahead. In the northern city of the Liomel Empire's territory, an old knight named Vios approached a woman and checked on her condition. She showed no sign of trouble, only the lingering restlessness that came after training had ended. Around them, Vios noticed his men lying on the ground, already defeated by her hand. Seeing their state, he accepted that they were no longer fit to serve as her sword practice partners. The woman extended the same judgment to Vios himself, her attention briefly shifting to the armor he wore. She questioned his destination and whether something unusual had occurred within the territory. Vios revealed that he had received orders from the master to patrol the northwest sector. The assignment alone suggested the seriousness of the situation, given his standing. He then disclosed that his true objective was the subjugation of a beast, one troublesome enough to warrant his dispatch. The mention of a beast caught her interest, the word lingering between them. Far away, in the northwest region of the territory, Len stood still as he observed his status screen. 3 years had passed since the first time he had leveled up. With the demon sword summoning technique now at level 2, the effects of level 3 were visible to him. However, he had exceeded the required proficiency by a small margin, and the pace of his growth had begun to feel slow. As his eyes traced the numbers on the screen, the long stretch ahead became clear. 3 years had brought him to 659, while 1500 still felt distant. The reason was not hard to trace. Len had not trained without interruption. There were days when he could not even hold a sword, occupied instead with farm work and preparations for the coming winter. Training for only a short time raised proficiency by just 1 point. Nearby, Len's grandmother, Rig, noticed him and waved as she remarked that the young master was up early again. Len returned the greeting calmly. Even so, Len's current strength was already more than enough for him to live quietly in the village. Rig brought up how his father had been boasting about him the day before, speaking with confidence about Len someday becoming a great knight in the capital. Len reacted modestly, making it clear that he had no intention of leaving the village. Before the moment could linger, a group of mounted men appeared over a nearby hill. Rig immediately urged Len to hurry back home, recognizing them as people of Lord Baron. Len reacted with brief confusion as he followed her lead. The riders headed straight toward Len's parents' house. Vios formally apologized for the sudden intrusion. Len's father received them without alarm and asked about their reason for coming to such a remote village. From a short distance away, Len watched the scene unfold. The presence of the Baron's servants felt heavy and unfamiliar. He recognized the Baron as the ruler of the territory and understood that under feudal order, every knight served a higher-ranking noble. His father was one of the knights tasked with protecting this village. This was the first time Len had ever seen armored knights up close, and the situation made him suspect that something serious had occurred. After reading the scroll handed over by Vios, Len's father asked whether a beast had caused major damage near the village. Vios confirmed that several villages had already been attacked and that there had been casualties. According to witnesses, the creature was a small beast that moved with wind-like speed. Vios explained that patrols had been ongoing to subjugate the creature, but no solid leads had been found yet. Because of this, they were requesting Len's father to join the vigilance team tasked with watching the area. The mention of a beast lingered in Len's mind. One serious enough to require a full subjugation unit was not something he could ignore. Len's father asked about the creature's rank. Vios assessed it as, at the very least, a rank D threat. The evaluation immediately raised concern, and the weight of that classification was clear. Beasts were ranked by a neutral global organization known as the Guild, which categorized them by threat level. The scale ranged from S at the top to G at the bottom. Within that system, a D-rank beast was comparable to an early-stage boss in a game. Even a group of 5 average knights would struggle to defeat one. Len's father questioned why such a creature would appear in their area at all. The beasts normally found near the village were no stronger than rank F. Vios explained that the cause was still under investigation. To strengthen security, knights from neighboring villages were planned to be brought in. However, due to the wide range of current dispatches, reinforcements would take 20 days to arrive. The length of that delay unsettled the household. Len's mother showed visible worry, while Vios offered an apology and assured them that every effort would be made to hasten the process. Until then, they were asked to endure. Len's father accepted the situation and resolved to increase patrols around the forest with the others. Nearby, Len quietly wondered about the beast itself. If he could identify its name, he might be able to piece together something useful from his game knowledge. Len's father then suggested that the visiting men must be exhausted and invited them to rest for a while. Vios expressed his gratitude and accepted. Before settling in, he turned his attention to Len and confirmed that the boy was Sir Roy's son. Len's father acknowledged this and prompted Len to offer his greetings to the knight captain. The realization struck Len at once. The man before him was the highest-ranking knight in the territory. After some time, the knights rested, drank, and ate. Once they had recovered, the group mounted their horses and departed, leaving the village behind in quiet tension. One of the men remarked on Len's age, noting that he was 10 and the same age as the lady in Leomel territory. Vios confirmed it and added that Len was a skill-bearer. He admitted that under different circumstances, he would have tested Len's swordsmanship, and expressed his hope that the boy would remain safe until the matter was resolved. Roy responded with renewed energy, acknowledging that their days would grow busier starting now. Len asked his father if he could see the beast's wanted notice, but his father dismissed the concern and told him not to worry. He revealed that he had once hunted a rank D beast on his own. The statement stunned Len. The idea that his father had done it alone stayed with him as his father clarified that it had happened before Len was born. Len had always known his father was strong, but learning that he surpassed the combined strength of 5 knights put everything into perspective. It explained why Len had never once managed to defeat him, even without the use of skills. After that day, Len's father returned from a hunt carrying several boars. Len observed that it had been a large hunt as well. His father confirmed it and explained that, for the time being, he planned to increase the amount of prey they caught. He mentioned that the small boars living around their area had especially good meat, and that some beasts were drawn to the region precisely because of them. Len understood the reasoning. If those easy targets were reduced, the dangerous beast would have less reason to come near the village. He confirmed that his father intended to thin out the boar population. His father agreed, noting that what remained behind were droppings and footprints. With careful inspection of the animal trails, it should be manageable. After all, there was no certainty that the beast would appear in the nearby forest. Len accepted that assessment, and the conversation settled into quiet understanding. After receiving the warning from the knights, Len's father changed his routine. Instead of hunting in the morning as he usually did, he began entering the forest in the afternoon and continued until sunset. Later, inside their home, Len and his father shared the large bath. Len expressed concern that his father had been pushing himself too hard lately. He also brought up that it was almost time for him to be allowed to help with hunting. His father acknowledged the point and explained that it would have to wait until the situation with the beast settled down. His father then apologized for not being able to accompany Len during sword training. Len accepted it without complaint. Both he and his mother were occupied with processing the hunted boars, and there was little time left for practice. Letting the meat spoil was not an option. His father understood and thanked Len for helping his mother. The conversation faded, and Len grew quiet as a realization settled in. He wished that nothing would happen. This peaceful life, unchanged for more than 10 years, was something he did not want to lose. His gaze lingered on his father. Time continued to pass, day after day, until the night of the 10th day arrived. Len becomes uneasy and goes to his mother. Only then does he tell her that his father still has not returned and asks if she also thinks it is already getting late. She agrees that it is and decides to go check on him. Len immediately says that he will go as well. She tries to stop him, warning that it is already dark outside and dangerous. Len refuses to stay behind. He insists that it is too dangerous for his mother to go alone and makes it clear that he will follow even if she tries to stop him. She falls silent, remembering how often she fears the day he might be badly hurt. Len and his mother step outside together. The darkness is thick, and he can barely see anything ahead. It is his first time going out at night, and the unfamiliar shadows make every movement uncertain. She tells him to watch his footing. She points toward a distant light and asks if he can see it. That light marks the entrance to the forest, the torches placed along the bridge. She draws his attention to the sound of flowing water and warns him not to slip into the river that separates the forest. As they continue, Len notices his eyes slowly adjusting to the dark. She tells him that they can only go as far as the bridge. Beyond that point lies the territory of the beast. Then she notices something. On the other side, beneath a tree, a man is sitting. She recognizes him as her husband and calls out to him. The man turns back toward them. Len realizes it truly is his father, and his mother is relieved that Roy is alive. Still, something feels wrong. Len wonders why his father would be in a place like this. They run toward him. Up close, the situation becomes clear. Roy is badly wounded, his body covered in blood. He is clutching his abdomen, where a serious injury has left him barely holding on. Milieu urged her husband to regain his composure. At that moment, Len caught the sound of approaching footsteps. He raised his torch and directed its light toward the darkness ahead. Without warning, a boar burst forward and charged straight at him. Len managed to stop it by bracing against its open mouth, but the force pressed in as its jaws began to close around him. Milieu struck the boar from behind. Len directed her to retreat as 2 more boars emerged nearby. At first, he struggled to hold the weight in front of him, but then the pressure shifted. He pushed back against the boar's mouth and felt it give way. He recognized the change as the effect of physical ability up, small. Len heaved the boar aside, sending it crashing into another. One of the remaining boars lunged toward Milieu, but Len moved first, delivering a swift strike to the back of its neck before it could reach her. He noted that it fell after a single blow. Another boar rushed in from behind, and Len responded with an upward strike that lifted it off balance. The boars collapsed onto the ground, and the last one fled into the darkness. Only then did Len realize that he could fight them. His strength was the result of accumulated training and acquired skills, now proving effective in real combat. Morning arrived quietly. Inside the house, Granny Rig prepared homemade medicine. Granny Rig assured Milieu and Len that they could rest more easily. Roy's condition remained unstable, but it had finally settled for the time being. Milieu expressed her relief and gratitude, thanking Granny Rig and also Len, acknowledging that she would not have been able to bring Roy back without his help. Len shared her relief, grateful that his father had pulled through. Still, the situation did not sit right with him. There was no reason his father should have been injured so severely by monsters that week. It suggested an encounter with one of the wanted monsters. Len considered the possibility that such creatures were still within the forest, while reinforcements were not expected for another 10 days. He reflected on what might happen if such a monster reached the village. The safety of his mother and the other villagers weighed on him, and he began to consider what he could do in the meantime. Len crossed the bridge and continued forward. Along the way, he noticed something familiar ahead. It was the small boar from the previous day. He recognized that it had not yet been taken by other monsters, which eased his concern. If it had remained any longer, it could have attracted one of the wanted monsters. He decided to move quickly and bring it back. A white wisp of spirit energy rose from the boar's body. Len was caught off guard as the energy flowed directly into his bracelet. It was drawn into his bracelet, and when he checked the display, he confirmed that both the demon sword summoning technique and the demon sword of wood had increased in proficiency by 2 points. He understood that this came from absorbing the magic power contained within the demon stone inside the monster. As he carried the boar home, he reflected on the change. The bracelet had never absorbed such power when he was younger. It appeared to respond only when he personally hunted the monster. After returning home, Len approached his mother and told her that there was something important he wanted to discuss with her. He explained that starting the next day, he intended to take over his father's duties. The declaration startled his mother, and fear showed in her reaction. Len made it clear that he understood the danger involved. Still, as a member of the Ashton family, he believed that protecting the village was his responsibility, just as it had been his father's. His mother objected, emphasizing that no matter his strength, he was still only a child. Len pressed on, pointing out that with his father injured, he was the only one left in the village capable of standing against the monsters. His mother fell silent. Len acknowledged that what he was asking was unreasonable. Even so, until reinforcements arrived, he asked her to allow him to protect the village and its people. His mother was left without words. That night, Len's mother showed no sign of sleeping. By the following morning, she set a clear condition. As long as Len returned before dusk, he would be allowed to enter the forest. Len kept her instructions firmly in mind. He was not to venture into the deeper parts of the forest, and if he ever lost his way, he was to use the Tsurugi Rock, also known as the Sword Rock, as a landmark. The name lingered with him as he moved forward. After walking through the forest for about an hour and a half, a massive rock came into view, tall and sharp, its shape resembling a sword planted upright in the ground. As Len glanced at the sword he carried, another thought surfaced. He had yet to test the demon sword of wood's attribute, natural magic, small. In the game, there had been a powerful boss known for wielding natural magic, and the memory stood out clearly. A sound rustled through the bushes. A small boar suddenly ran toward him. The sudden movement caught him off guard, but he quickly recognized it as another young boar. Len focused on how to use magic and attempted to activate it. A sprout pushed up from the ground, followed by more growth as vines extended outward. The plants wrapped around the boar, tangling its legs and halting its movement completely. The result exceeded his expectations. As he looked at the trapped boar, he found himself unwilling to prolong its suffering. He resolved to finish it with a single strike. Though it consumed magic, natural magic proved easy to control. The encounter became an opportunity to practice, using the charging boar as a test subject. Some time later, back in the village, a man stared in disbelief. On his first day alone in the forest, Len successfully hunted 12 boars. On the second day, he brought down another 12, this time small bears. By the third day, the number increased further. By the fourth and fifth days since he began entering the forest, Len continued to raise his hunting count. Throughout that time, he encountered no sign of the wanted monster. As Len checked his status screen, he noted that the demon sword of metal would soon be unlocked. The realization left him quietly anticipating what would come next. That night, he returned home as usual. Inside the house, Granny Rig turned to Milieu and explained that Roy's condition had taken a turn for the worse. She took over his care and asked Milieu to wait outside. Len looked to his mother, sensing the change. She remained silent for a moment before explaining that Roy's condition had deteriorated since dusk. A large amount of precious medicinal herbs had already been used, yet his life was only barely being sustained. The news shook Len. He pressed for a reason, but Milieu could only respond through tears, unable to explain why it had happened. Inside the room, Granny Rig realized that their supply of medicinal herbs was nearly exhausted. By the end of the night, nothing would remain. She stepped out and instructed Milieu to retrieve a formula box from her home, noting that her husband would know where to find it. Milieu understood immediately and moved without hesitation. Left behind, Len stood restless, his thoughts fixed on his father's condition. He turned to Granny Rig and asked whether there was anything he could do, wondering if the herbs might still grow somewhere nearby. Granny Rig explained that no such herbs remained in the surrounding area. Long ago they had grown at the base of the Tsurugi rock, but they had disappeared during a brutal winter several decades earlier. The word struck him hard. Len's attention shifted to the herbs laid out on the table. He asked if those were the same plants. Granny Rig confirmed it, then apologized and urged him to wait outside while she continued tending to Roy. Len stepped out of the room, his mind racing. He kept thinking about the herb, rondo grass. There was no mistaking it. It was a healing item he had relied on countless times in the game. The thought lingered. Could it really be extinct? He would not believe it until he saw it with his own eyes. Night in the forest was dangerous, and every step carried greater risk, but he could not hesitate. If he did nothing, his father would die. He ran through the darkness, pushing himself toward Tsurugi Rock. When he arrived at its base, he scanned the area. As he had feared, no rondo grass remained at the foot of the rock. His gaze shifted upward to the peak. He considered the climb and realized he could use natural magic to help him. Without hesitation, he summoned vines to grow along the rock face and used them to ascend. After some time, he spotted an unknown grass growing higher up. Reaching the peak, he discovered a cluster of rondo grass. Relief washed over him. It was not extinct after all. With enough gathered, he was confident he could save his father. Nearby, he noticed something that made him pause. Bones, scattered remains of the little boars. Their placement was odd, so high on the rock. As he examined more closely, he saw ornaments among the bones. A chill ran down his spine. The unease followed him as he began to descend. On the way back, 3 little boars appeared in his path, and Len struck them down swiftly. But something felt off. The boars seemed terrified, as if fleeing from something beyond him. A loud, labored breathing reached his ears. When he turned, he saw it, the monster atop Tsurugi Rock. Finally, he understood. This was the wanted monster. It was unlike anything he had seen before. White in color, it had 4 tails and 6 eyes, radiating a presence that marked it as a D-rank unique, a Chief Wolven. The Chief Wolven stood at the peak of D-rank beasts, a unique monster whose defeat granted rare rewards. Len moved at full speed to put distance between them. When he glanced back, nothing followed at first. Then the Chief Wolven charged without warning. Len evaded the rush and vaulted onto a tree. The beast struck again, and Len avoided the follow-up just in time. The gap in speed was immediately clear, and the threat went beyond raw movement. This was no ordinary beast. Before the realization could fully settle, the Chief Wolven vanished from sight, leaving Len momentarily caught off guard by its sudden absence. The creature wielded wind magic, gathering air around its body to form invisible hands. With them, it could steal items and launch unseen attacks. This was not an enemy he was meant to confront at his current level. Against such an enemy, retreat was no longer an option. The Chief Wolven would not allow him to escape, forcing Len to consider how his current self could survive this fight. His natural magic lacked sufficient power for a direct confrontation. Closing in toward its stomach became the only viable approach, despite the risk of failure. As he watched closely, something stood out. One of the Chief Wolven's legs showed damage. The wound suggested an earlier clash, likely left by his father. That realization connected everything. It explained how his father had escaped and why the beast had not advanced on the village. The memory of his father surfaced, fulfilling his duty as a knight. Len steadied himself, understanding that this was not the place to give up. At that moment, the Chief Wolven unleashed a massive roar, the sound carried forward by a violent surge of wind. Len remained composed as he placed a hand against the ground, searching for a way to draw upon nature magic. Vines and leaves burst forth, rising to shield his body. The protection barely held before collapsing under the force of the chief wolven's roar, though the spreading vines managed to entangle the beast's movement. Even a brief pause was enough. Len launched himself forward with everything he had and brought his wooden sword down on the chief wolven's head. The impact shattered the weapon on contact. The magic sword of wood broke apart, leaving him stunned by the sudden loss. He attempted to summon the weapon again as the chief wolven prepared to counterattack. The magic responded, and the sword reformed in his grasp, but a sharp pain tore through his head immediately after. The strain drained his mana far faster than expected, likely worsened by forcing the resummoning of a destroyed weapon. In that opening, the chief wolven struck. Its jaws closed around Len's body, lifting him off the ground. Even as he was caught, his eyes caught sight of the wounded leg. With the little strength he had left, he drove his wooden sword into that injured spot. The chief wolven recoiled and hurled him away, slamming him into a tree. Len fell hard to the ground below. The beast turned toward him, its anger unmistakable. While still down, Len cast nature magic once more, vines and leaves wrapping around him as a barrier. The chief wolven advanced and tore through the plants with its fangs, ripping the protection apart piece by piece. Within the failing cover, Len's strength continued to drain as blood flowed freely. Losing consciousness became a real possibility. He reached for a rondo grass, recognizing that he could use it to recover. The thought of his father surfaced immediately, reminding him of how limited the supply was. After a moment of hesitation, Len steadied himself and chose not to use it, knowing there might not be enough left for his father. Len's focus sharpened as he reminded himself of why he had come. The chief wolven drew closer, relentless in its pursuit, but his attention fell on his bracelet, an unexpected tool left for him. The beast paused briefly, then Len seized the moment. He sprang forward, bursting from cover, and ran despite his injuries. The chief wolven gave chase, growling as it closed in. Glancing back, Len signaled it to wait, and the creature became entangled once more in vines and leaves, buying Len precious seconds. Len's mana was completely drained. He forced himself forward as the chief wolven tore free from the vines once again. There was no time left to stall. His path turned toward the corpses of the little boars he had slain earlier. Only 3 more were needed. If their magic stones were absorbed, the magic sword of metal would finally unlock. The chief wolven closed the distance from behind, its presence pressing in with every step. The magic sword of wood had already proven insufficient. With no other options remaining, Len committed fully to his plan. He hurled the wooden sword toward the chief wolven. The beast avoided the weapon, but the sword activated midair. Vines erupted outward, spreading rapidly and binding the chief wolven once more, restricting its movement just long enough. Len reached the magic stones and began absorbing their power. As the energy flowed into him, a quiet memory surfaced. His family standing together, arms wrapped around one another. The image steadied him. Saving his father remained the reason he could not fall here, and that resolve held firm as the absorption continued. The absorption completed, power coursed through Len. There was no room for doubt, he would not lose here. As the chief wolven lunged, he formed a brilliant energy to summon the leveled-up sword. Channeling every ounce of his remaining strength, he drove it straight into the monster's mouth. The sword blazed with light, piercing from its jaws through to its head, a final, decisive strike. The sword drove through the chief wolven's head, and the monster collapsed. Len now held the magic sword of metal. He knelt beside the fallen creature as the weapon absorbed the magic stone embedded in the chief wolven. Exhausted, Len's body refused to move. He clutched his bag tightly, his thoughts drifting to his parent. In the distance, a group of horsemen approached. One of them noted the cry of a beast coming from this direction. Len watched as they drew closer, arriving at the site where the monster had been slain. The horsemen then rode to the Ashton household. A man knocked on the door, announcing their presence. Milieu opened it to find knights from Clausel. One of them explained there was no time to waste and requested to quickly take Len to his room. Milieu froze at the sight of her badly injured son. When she asked what had happened, the knights explained they had only just arrived. One of them lifted Len's bag, noting that he had been desperately holding onto it, suggesting it might contain something important. Milieu opened the bag and discovered the rondo grass. Realizing her son had gone out to retrieve it, Tears came to her eyes as she embraced him. That night, news spread through the Leomel territory. A knight reported Len Ashton's feat. Vios reacted with surprise as it became clear Len had defeated the Chief Wolven alone. A lady arrived, inquiring about the Chief Wolven. She was informed that a boy capable of defeating a D-rank beast single-handedly now stood within their territory. 2 months had passed. Len checked the progress on his status screen, examining the magic sword of Bandit. Its design felt more like finger armor than a traditional blade. Wandering through the forest, he reflected on the unexpected reward of defeating the Chief Wolven, a new type of magic sword. As he searched for treasures and climbed Saruji Rock, a voice called out to Lord Len. A knight appeared, noting that Len was still not in full condition. He reminded Len that they had asked to be notified before entering the forest. Len apologized. While riding together, Len expressed that he had survived thanks to the knights arriving sooner than expected, offering his thanks. The knight responded that hearing this made the rush worthwhile and admitted surprise at Len's physical strength. The conversation turned to the bag Len carried. Before the knight could finish his question, Len confirmed its contents: treasures taken from the Chief Wolven. He explained his plan to sell them to support the village, though he hesitated over potential taxes. The knight reassured him. This year's reward included a tax exemption, and the Chief Wolven's materials were highly valuable medicinal resources. Len's intended sale at a slightly higher price would allow the village to thrive for decades. Len responded with quiet satisfaction, recognizing the impact. Back at the Ashton household, Sir Roy had finally risen. He greeted Len with happiness, having heard of the treasures he had acquired. As Len handed the treasures to his father, he humbly credited his success not to himself alone, but to his father's guidance, which had made it possible to overcome the beast. His father laughed softly, noting that Len was still as selfless as ever. He asked if there was anything Len wanted for himself. Len requested the beautiful stone his father was holding. It was, if he remembered correctly, the Salacia Pearl, an item of extraordinary rarity, even among the treasures dropped by the Chief Wolven. He also showed his father the bracelet he now wore, quietly asking if he could keep it. His father nodded, allowing him to do so. He reminded Len that his actions had been reckless and had caused him worry, then patted his head. Still, he acknowledged that Len had done well, risking his life to protect others, and told him he was truly remarkable. With that, a long period of peace settled over the nameless village. Outside, Len went about his daily chores. He noticed a girl sitting on the rough stone wall. She, in turn, noticed him. He realized immediately that she was not from their village. The girl asked if he was Len Ashton. Confirming that he was, he hesitated, sensing a familiarity he could not place. In that moment it became clear. This was a fateful encounter and the beginning of a new story. The girl revealed that she had long wanted to meet Len. She drew 2 swords, tossed one onto the ground, and checked on the state of his injuries. Len set down what he had been carrying and made it clear that his wounds had already healed. He sought to understand how she knew him, then reached down and picked up the sword. She did not address his question. With his recovery confirmed, she moved straight to beginning the match. Len reacted with confusion as the situation shifted without warning. She leveled her sword at him and charged. Len blocked the opening strike on instinct, caught off guard by her speed. She pressed forward with a series of rapid attacks. Len met each one, stopping every strike in quick succession. She acknowledged his skill, recognizing how cleanly he handled the sword despite having fallen behind before. Still unsure of the situation, Len tried to grasp why the fight had started at all. He recognized her ability. She eased the concern by indicating that the blade had been dulled. Len understood that this alone was no issue. It became clear to him that she had planned for this encounter. The exchange was becoming troublesome. Before either of them could be injured, Len decided to bring it to an end. In a sudden move, Len closed the distance and pinned her to the ground. He asserted his victory. With Len above her, the girl grew flustered and muttered something he struggled to catch. She raised her voice, protesting the closeness. Len immediately stood and offered an apology. She got back on her feet and called for another round, urging him to ready his sword. Len hesitated in confusion, realizing they were about to begin again. She insisted on continuing, making it clear that she had not yet acknowledged defeat. Len was left unsettled, unable to grasp what was unfolding as events slipped further out of his expectations. Before the situation could continue, a group of knights arrived. One of them sharply intervened, addressing her status and calling an end to the exchange. The girl reacted with visible confusion at their sudden presence. She fell silent, then asked Len to allow her to explain. With composed formality, she performed a curtsy. She produced a sealed envelope and presented herself as her father's representative, stating that she had come bearing a letter for the Ashton family. The letter conveyed her father's high regard for House Ashton, praising their victory over the Chief Wolven and expressing strong expectations for Len Ashton's future. At that moment, Len sensed the truth before it was fully revealed. The girl introduced herself as Lisha Clausel, known as the Saintess of White. The name struck Len immediately, his realization settling in all at once. Vios respectfully questioned why the princess had advanced alone, without notice and without any escort. The concern was clear, given the risk. Lisha brushed it off, explaining that the others had taken too long to rest. Len's understanding completed itself. She was the same figure he was destined to kill in the world described by the legend of the Seven Heroes. The reason for her presence here remained unclear to him. Later, at the Ashton household, the weight of the day lingered. Princess Lisha spoke with Sir Roy. The knights relaxed with drinks. Lisha and Len spent time in quiet conversation. Len lowered his head, reflecting on how events had reached this point. None of it aligned with his expectations. Lisha Clausel, the Saintess of White, was a central figure in the legend of the Seven Heroes. Though she did not join the protagonist's party during major event battles, her power was substantial, far beyond what the protagonist could rival without significant growth. She was also widely known as a highly popular figure for her exceptional appearance and composed personality. Even so, it was well established that she could not be romanced, earning her the reputation of the unconquerable heroine. While sharing tea, Lisha turned the conversation toward Len's future and asked whether he had any plans to visit her homeland. The question caught Len off guard. Lisha explained that her reason for coming in person was to see for herself the one who had defeated the Chief Wolven. Their brief sparring match had convinced her that Len was not only strong, but also courageous. She pointed out that his immediate decision to take up the sword, despite being challenged without warning, demonstrated that clearly. Len, reflecting quietly, recalled how sudden and unreasonable the request for a match had felt to him. From a station knight, Len had learned that the village lay within the Clausel frontier. Even so, reaching the city would take more than 10 days by horseback. Len had believed that as long as he remained in their remote village, he would never cross paths with Lisha, the feudal lord's daughter. Yet reality had overturned that assumption. Lisha had come to the village of her own accord, solely to meet him and test his skill. Noticing his distraction, she prompted him to explain himself. Len responded with restraint, expressing concern that she had overestimated him. He clarified that his father had already injured the Chief Wolven beforehand, and that their victory had not been achieved through his strength alone. He went on to explain that during their earlier sparring session, he had not even understood proper technique. He did not believe he possessed the courage Lisha attributed to him. Lisha dismissed the need for such restraint. She noted that anyone else would have boasted endlessly after defeating a monster like the Chief Wolven. To her, Len stood apart from noblemen who relied only on words without substance. That was precisely why she wanted him to come with her to Clausel, insisting on it without compromise. With him there, they could spar whenever they wished. Len fell into quiet consideration. It was clear that Lisha genuinely enjoyed sword fighting. From their brief exchange earlier, he could also tell that she was a diligent and disciplined fighter. Even so, he felt an increasing need to keep his distance. He eventually expressed his apology and stated that he had no intention of leaving his village. Lisha fell silent for a moment. She observed that it felt as though he had been distancing himself from her since the beginning, questioning whether that meant he disliked her. Len clarified his position. Leaving would mean abandoning his father, the only one capable of protecting the village, and forcing him to shoulder everything alone. If another demon like the Chief Wolven were to appear, the village would have no means to survive. Lisha accepted his reasoning. Even so, she resolved inwardly that she would not give up. One morning passed with Len's family sharing breakfast alongside Lisha. As the day faded and night settled in, Len headed to the stable to check on the horses. Without warning, a sword dropped onto the ground nearby. Lisha stepped forward, making her presence known. Len recognized the situation for what it was, questioning whether this was meant to be a post-meal workout. Lisha accepted the observation without hesitation. Since he had already noticed, it simplified matters. She had secured permission from Weiss as well as from Len's parents, leaving no cause for concern. Len stiffened at the realization. Even Weiss had been persuaded. He bent down to retrieve the sword but stopped midway, hesitating. For a brief moment, he considered simply refusing to take it. Lisha pressed the matter, making it clear that if Len chose not to pick up the sword, she intended to extend her stay even longer. Len gave in and lifted the sword. He framed it as coincidence, noting that he happened to be in the mood to train as well. Lisha paused, then questioned why Len went so far to reject her intentions. She sensed there was a reason behind it. She declared that he would have to explain himself after she defeated him. Until then, she remained set on taking him back to Clausel and urged him to prepare himself. Len countered with the possibility of winning instead. Lisha accepted that outcome as well, stating that in such a case, she would simply return to the village again. Len resigned himself to the situation. Either result worked against him. Lisha moved first, charging while Len was momentarily off guard. He reacted in time, intercepting her strike. The sparring resumed at once. Lisha was caught off guard by his response, surprised that he could defend himself so cleanly despite lowering his guard. As the exchange continued, Len questioned why she was so intent on defeating him in the first place. Lisha made it clear that her reason was simple. She hated losing. Even as the Saintess of White, she had no intention of accepting defeat against someone her own age. Len could not see how her title related to that at all. Lisha explained the meaning behind it. The Saintess of White was blessed with exceptional proficiency in swordsmanship and physical ability. On top of that, she could wield sacred magic. For someone granted all of that, losing was deeply frustrating. From that moment on, she shifted gears. She resolved to fight seriously and held firm confidence that she would defeat Len. Len sensed the change immediately. Her movements became faster and sharper, as if she had turned into a different person altogether. He recognized it as the effect of sacred magic. Sacred magic combined the restorative power of white magic with the purifying strength of holy magic, capable of healing wounds, countering curses, detoxifying, and reinforcing allies. It was a potent form of magic, one that could enhance combat ability directly. Len launched a swift strike. Lisha evaded by leaping into a tree, then rebounded back toward him to trade blows. Len met the attack and blocked it cleanly. The nature of her strength became clear to him. Sacred magic swordsmanship and enhanced physical ability were unified within the skill of the Saintess of White. In this state, Lisha was undeniably strong. Len questioned why she had not used this earlier. Lisha acknowledged it, explaining that Weiss would reprimand her for using it without permission. Len understood the implication. She had received approval this time. He could not help but note that Weiss indulged Lisha far more than he should. At that point, Len shifted his approach and began to fight seriously. He had already adjusted to Lisha's movements. When she drove forward with another attack, Len slipped past it and surged ahead, sword drawn, thrusting straight toward her neck. Lisha's strength was undeniable, but to Len, it still fell short of the pressure he had faced during the battle with the Chief Wolven. Once more, Len brought his blade to her neck. Lisha attempted a counter, but Len lowered his posture and avoided it cleanly. He seized her arm, locked it in place, and again guided his sword to her neck. Lisha refused to stop. She continued pressing forward with relentless attacks, yet Len met each one without faltering. In a sudden shift, Len struck her footing, sending her down instantly. As Lisha fell, Len dropped to one knee and placed his sword at her neck, signaling the end of the match. He claimed victory. Lisha was stunned and unwilling to accept the outcome, rising to her feet almost immediately. She prepared herself for another round, still refusing to acknowledge defeat. Len was taken aback by her insistence. As both of them stood ready to clash again, a single clap cut through the tension. Weiss had arrived. He commended Len's performance, recognizing the extraordinary level of skill he displayed at such a young age, even overcoming Lisha while she wielded sacred magic. Weiss noted that it was no surprise Len had managed to defeat the Chief Wolven on his own. Beyond Lord Roy's guidance, Len must have poured tremendous effort into honing his strength. Weiss then turned his attention to Lisha, remarking that she had surely grasped the full extent of Len's power through this exchange. Weiss addressed Lisha, stating that upon returning to the residence, it would be best if she used this defeat as motivation. Lisha fell quiet, then acknowledged it without resistance. She stepped up to Len and offered an apology for intruding on him so suddenly that day, expressing that the experience had been valuable to her. Len responded in kind, recognizing it as a meaningful experience for himself as well. Lisha then excused herself and headed off to rest. Weiss turned to Len and apologized on Lisha's behalf, trusting that Len would forgive her actions. He added that he would be sure to inform the Baron that the Ashton family had shown them generous hospitality. Len downplayed it, noting that he had not done much. Weiss disagreed, affirming that Len's contribution had been significant. He explained that recently, even his own subordinates, including those close to Lisha's age, had been unable to match her. As a result, she had grown complacent. This encounter, he believed, had served as a necessary wake-up call. Weiss then mentioned that, if circumstances allowed, he would have preferred to stay a few more days and continue the sparring sessions. Len strongly hoped that would not happen. However, Weiss clarified that they would be departing the next morning. Lisha herself had negotiated with her father and come to the village to carry out several responsibilities. Len learned that Lisha was visiting nearby villages on the Baron's behalf, tasked with easing the unrest caused by the recent turmoil. The realization left an impression on him. Lisha's ability to act as a feudal lord's representative at such a young age was remarkable. She was far from a sheltered or self-important noble. In the legend of the Seven Heroes, Lisha Clausel was known to excel in both martial and scholarly pursuits, earning top marks at the academy and standing out as a figure of exceptional capability. Len reflected on Lisha's behavior. She often came across as overbearing and difficult to grasp, yet beneath that surface she seemed honest and straightforward, with a genuine sense of goodwill. That thought led him back to an unsettling truth. In the legend, he was meant to kill her. Even now, he could not understand how events were supposed to lead to that outcome. Their shared childhood was barely touched upon in the game's story. Even so, Len had never imagined encountering her at such an early stage. Morning arrived at the Ashton household. In her guest room, Lisha remained awake, having failed to sleep through the night. She was unwilling to give up at this point. With that resolve, she began writing a letter and later handed it to Weiss to read. He immediately recognized it as something intended for Len. Lisha planned to give it to him before their departure. Alongside it, she prepared a separate letter expressing gratitude to the Ashton family. She believed her feelings about inviting Len to Clausel would be conveyed more clearly in writing and sought Weiss's opinion on the matter. As Weiss read through it, he hesitated. Lisha noticed his reaction and questioned whether she had made an error. Weiss concluded that the letter read like a declaration of affection. Lisha reacted with visible shock at the suggestion. Weiss affirmed his impression and pointed out phrasing that spoke of passion surpassing anything felt before they had met. Lisha explained that she had chosen those words deliberately, intending only to express that the rumored exceptional boy had proven even more remarkable in person. Weiss accepted her explanation but warned that the wording could easily be interpreted as the earnest feelings of a young woman deeply in love. Lisha remained stunned as he continued, drawing attention to other phrases praising Len's valor, bravery, and gallantry, as well as lines that read like a plea for reassurance not to be abandoned. Lisha insisted that what she had written was simply the truth. If someone demonstrated such remarkable swordsmanship, it was only natural to want to spar with them repeatedly. Weiss pointed out that even so, the tone resembled that of a provincial girl who had just witnessed a hero for the first time. Lisha took the letter back from him and read through it carefully. As she went over each line, she came to the same conclusion. It did, in fact, read like a confession. She sat down and considered why it had turned out that way. She was accustomed to drafting official and administrative documents. Perhaps this was the result of writing her first truly personal letter. After a moment of thought, she decided that regardless, the letter would be discarded once they left the village. Their departure came soon after. With their first meeting concluded, marked by an intense and memorable exchange of blades, Lisha departed the village in a subdued manner. Along the way, a sudden gust of wind caught hold of the letter she had intended to throw away. It slipped from her possession without notice. At that moment, she remained unaware of what had been lost. Later, Len walked alone through the forest. His attention turned to the demon sword of banditry. He realized that he had yet to properly test it and decided to do some light practice. Spotting a bird overhead, Len activated the sword's ability. When he checked the result, he found that a single feather had been taken. He then noticed several birds perched together in a tree. Curious about what held them in place, he used the ability again. This time, what fell into his possession was not a feather, but a folded sheet of paper. Len examined it and recognized it as a letter. As he read through its contents, he realized that it was not merely a message, but a love letter. Len examined the invitation and questioned who was attempting to summon him to Clausel. He noticed that the paper was made of high-quality parchment. From its form alone, it seemed likely that careful reading would reveal a reference to the sender's swordsmanship. That led him to consider whether the letter might have been written by Lisha, and why it had reached him here. Before he could examine it further, the sound of a galloping horse approached. When the riders came into view, Len immediately recognized that the knights were not part of Weiss's group. His attention went to their crest, and he realized it differed from Clausel's insignia. That made it clear they belonged to another domain. The knights stopped in front of him and addressed him as a local youth, asking whether he was a subject of the village under the Ashton family. Len confirmed it and asked about their identity. The knights explained that they were delivering a message approved by Viscount Givens and requested that Len guide them to the Ashton family estate. The name of Viscount Givens lingered with Len. He recalled a domain to the northeast, ruled by nobles with no ties to the Ashton family. That house held a higher rank than a baron, making it impossible to disregard their presence. Len acknowledged the request and agreed to lead them to the estate. With Lisha already gone, Len found himself wondering what this visit would bring. After some time, the group arrived at the Ashton residence. The leading knight entered the house to deliver the message directly to Sir Roy, while Len and the accompanying knights from the baron's side remained outside. The leading knight returned from inside the house and addressed Len directly, admitting that he had not expected him to be Len Ashton. He informed Len that the Viscount had a separate message intended specifically for him. Len reacted with visible surprise as the knight conveyed that Viscount Givens held his abilities in high regard and wished to employ him under his own residence. At that moment, one of the knights representing the baron stepped forward and offered an apology, stating that their lord had been the first to extend an invitation to Len. The leading knight acknowledged the affiliation, recognizing him as a retainer of the Clausel family. He pointed out that an invitation alone did not constitute a decision, and as such, he saw no issue with approaching Len directly. The knight of the baron responded firmly, explaining that the matter went beyond simple invitations. He emphasized that the village fell under the dominion of the Clausel family, and any attempt to summon Len should first be discussed with them. Rank differences and factional alignments aside, he stressed that this was a matter of proper courtesy, one that any servant of Viscount Givens should reasonably understand. A brief silence followed, shared by Len and the surrounding knights. The leading knight accepted the point and acknowledged the fault, stating that they would correct their conduct. He then mounted his horse, indicated that they would return at another time, and departed with his group. Inside the house, Sir Roy read through the delivered letter. The document laid out multiple justifications for why the neighboring domain sought to incorporate the village into the Viscount's territory. As Sir Roy absorbed its contents, it became clear that the influence of factional disputes had finally reached even this remote place. The knight representing the baron admitted, with some hesitation, that Sir Roy was absolutely correct. Len considered the implications quietly. The Leomel Empire was divided into three main factions, each composed of nobles aligned with a specific ideology. The first, the Imperial faction, revered the nation's founder, the Lion King, and maintained that only the imperial family held the right to lead. The The second, the hero faction, consisted of families that had produced heroes who once defeated the Demon King. Led by the 7 major noble houses, this faction was celebrated in the legends of the 7 heroes. Viscount Givens belonged to this group, and many in the Empire believed that curbing the imperial faction's influence would promote freedom, reduce wealth disparity, and strengthen democratic principles. The third group was the neutral faction, populated by pacifists who avoided direct conflict and respected the positions of both major factions. Baron Clausel was part of this neutral faction. Len turned his attention back to the letter and posed a practical question to the knight from the Baron. Was it really feasible to incorporate one noble's area into another's domain? The knight explained that such occurrences were rare, particularly in border villages, but if all parties agreed, it was technically possible. Sir Roy spoke next, questioning the point of claiming a village as small as theirs. The knight could not provide a definite answer, but suggested that there was likely some hidden strategy behind the move. Whatever the true reason, he added, there must be a deliberate motive guiding the attempt. Another knight spoke up, noting that many sought to bring the Clausel family into their sphere of influence. The Baron was widely respected as a capable noble, and the presence of the Saintess of White added further weight to the village's significance. Len felt a quiet unease. He did not wish to become entangled in a power struggle riddled with conspiracies. Yet, as the Ashton family served the Clausel family, their fates were not entirely separate. There was a chance they had already been drawn into something far larger than they realized. He resolved to remain cautious, uncertain of Viscount Givens' true intentions. As he continued reading, a specific passage caught his attention. He turned to his father and noted that the letter mentioned incorporating the village and stationing knights to compensate for a lack of military strength. He asked whether this lack of military strength referred to the Chief Wolven incident. Sir Roy confirmed it was likely the case but emphasized that the event was unusual, an abnormality rather than a pattern. Outside of that incident, the Ashton family had no history of military insufficiency. The word abnormality lingered in Len's mind. He recalled Weiss Sama mentioning that feudal lords could be punished if their territories suffered repeated damage from monsters due to inadequate defenses. The knight agreed, affirming that protecting the land remained the responsibility of its feudal lord. Len considered the implications carefully. If this area and the neighboring villages had suffered significant damage, he asked whether the Clausel family could face punishment for failing to protect their lands. The thought led him to a troubling conclusion. Perhaps Viscount Givens' intentions extended beyond a simple message or invitation. Sir Roy's eyes widened as Len outlined his reasoning. He asked for clarification, questioning whether Len was suggesting that Viscount Givens might be attempting to frame Baron Clausel by exploiting the recent disturbances. Len confirmed the possibility and offered an example. Viscount Givens could present himself as a protector of the accused Baron, drawing him closer into the hero faction. If such a plan had been in motion from the start, it raised the grim prospect that the Chief Wolven incident itself might have been connected to the Viscount's schemes. Sir Roy struggled to believe the suggestion, questioning whether Len was implying that Viscount Givens had deliberately unleashed a monster. Len responded cautiously, acknowledging that he had no concrete evidence, but pointed out that all the pieces fit if his theory were true. Sir Roy absorbed the explanation, understanding the logic, yet remained unsettled. If such a plot were indeed the case, he remarked, it could trigger a scandal of immense proportions, one with consequences that would ripple far beyond their small village. The knight admitted that he was genuinely surprised by how quickly Len had arrived at such a conclusion. In truth, even the Baron had harbored concerns about the possibility. He praised Len as a true intellectual. Len responded modestly, insisting that it was merely a guess. For now, there was little they could do beyond remaining vigilant to prevent unforeseen events. Sir Roy agreed, though he admitted he could not remain idle forever. Milieu reminded him not to push himself too hard. The other knight noted that they would report the matter to the Baron immediately, urging him to strengthen vigilance. Len agreed and requested that they do so without delay. In his thoughts, Len reflected on how his position may have shifted. The unsettling possibility that he could one day confront the same hero faction once celebrated in the legends of the 7 heroes weighed on him. He had no idea what might have unfolded while he remained here. Time passed steadily, the seasons shifting from autumn into winter. After a hunt, one of the knights remarked that it had been another successful day. Len agreed, expressing gratitude for the knight's assistance, noting that their village was now fully prepared for winter. The knight complimented Len again, marveling at his talent, and added that if Len were to journey to the imperial capital, he would undoubtedly achieve great success. Len politely declined, stating that he could not leave the village as the heir of the Ashton family. The knight expressed regret, shedding a quiet tear, only to be lightly scolded by another who patted his shoulder, telling him he was troubling Len enough already. Later, back at the Ashton residence, Len returned home to a familiar voice. Lisha sat reading, and she informed him that if he had been searching for his mother, she was with Granny Rig. Len reacted with a loud, startled noise. Lisha flinched and asked him not to raise his voice so suddenly, as it hurt her ears. Still shocked, Len asked why she was there. Lisha responded with a simple question: why would she not be? She explained that there was only one reason for her presence. If Len was not going to Clausel, it was obvious that she would come here instead. After some time, Lisha led Len to a shower and asked if it was convenient. She presented it as a gift for their recent sparring match. A crystal orb capable of producing water, sparing Len the trip to the river or well. Len considered whether the device might be powered by magic stones. He acknowledged its convenience but questioned if it had been expensive. Lisha reassured him, explaining it was an old tool that had stopped working. She had repaired it herself using her own pocket money. The conversation shifted to Viscount Givens. Lisha apologized for the earlier incident and explained that her father wanted to protest, but dealing with higher-ranking nobles left them little room to act. Even as the Saintess of White, her influence could not surpass established ranks and factions. Len listened quietly. She clarified that the title of Saintess, blessed by the chief deity Elfin, had appeared many times throughout history. Unlike the 7 heroes, the Saintesses had never defeated a demon lord or achieved remarkable feats. Len remained silent, noting that while they were respected, they were not on the same level as the 7 heroes or the Lion King. Lisha then requested Len's guidance to meet his father. In Roy's room, she applied sacred magic to heal him. Sir Roy, feeling better, expressed his gratitude, and Lisha dismissed it lightly. Outside the room, Len asked if she had treated him when she had arrived earlier. Lisha admitted she had and asked if he had not known. Len fell silent, realizing he had been unaware. Later, Len and Lisha sparred again outside. Len noticed that her movements were sharper and more precise, evidence of the effort she had put in during the short time. Suddenly, Lisha stumbled, but Len caught her. He warned her to be careful. Her face flushed and she went quiet. Len checked if she was all right, maintaining a steady, calm presence. Lisha suddenly stepped back from him, her expression sharp. She asked how Len could move so much without showing any sign of fatigue, questioning the extent of his stamina. Her tone shifted quickly, softening as she admitted that the moments she spent sparring with him were the most enjoyable. She smiled and declared that they would spar again the next morning, determined not to lose. Lisha remained for several days, and during that time, they shared multiple sparring sessions, each one more focused than the last. When the day came for her to leave, she said goodbye for now. Len watched her departure, acknowledging that she truly intended to return, though he reminded himself that getting too close might not be wise. Winter passed, and the next chapter of events began as Len entered his 11th spring in this new world. He and his father returned from hunting, with Len noting that his father's health had fully recovered. Sir Roy agreed, expressing gratitude for everyone who had cared for him. As they neared home, they noticed a group of knights stationed in front of the house. Len immediately recognized them as Viscount Givens' men. The lead knight announced that he had been waiting for Sir Roy Ashton. Sir Roy asked the reason for their visit. The knight explained that they had come with an invitation, emphasizing the Viscount's continued regard for Sir Roy's abilities. He added that he also brought good news for Len. A sense of unease settled over Len. The knight revealed that the Viscount wished to support Len's admission into the special class at the prestigious Imperial Cadet Academy. The announcement left everyone stunned. Sir Roy remarked on the difficulty of general admission and sought confirmation that Len was indeed being considered for the special class. The lead knight confirmed, acknowledging their surprise. He explained that the special class was exceptional, reserved only for the heirs of the 7 great noble families and heroes, children of high-ranking generals, and a few prodigies raised in the imperial capital from childhood. The lead knight added that the Viscount had once served as the Assistant Minister of Justice, making the act of sending a recommendation to the Academy a simple task. He then asked Len if he wished to develop his talents in the capital. Len declined politely, stating that he had no intention of leaving the village. The knight reacted with disbelief, questioning why Len would refuse such an opportunity and whether he did not wish to become a noble. He emphasized that completing the special class could grant Len a noble title immediately upon graduation. Len remained firm. The Imperial Cadet Academy, and especially the special class, was steeped in the legacy of the 7 heroes. Attending would place him directly on the legendary path, but he felt a quiet fulfillment in his everyday life in the village. He apologized, but his decision stood. The knight, stunned, turned to Sir Roy, asking if he did not want his son to advance. Sir Roy acknowledged that while he recognized the value of education in the imperial capital and the historical knowledge it offered, Len's own will was paramount. He also expressed the pride he carried in serving the Clausel family for generations and decided to personally write a response for the Viscount, to be delivered when the envoy left. The lead knight fell silent, closing his eyes for a moment, then accepted the decision. He confirmed they would deliver Sir Roy's reply themselves. With a final remark on the unfortunate outcome, the envoy departed. A few days later, circumstances shifted. Lady Lisha arrived in the village. Len welcomed her for the 3rd time. Inside the house, she received treatment. Weiss apologized, explaining that Lisha had fallen ill 3 days prior while near another village during their travels. Len asked for clarification on exactly what had happened. Weiss explained that Lisha's illness was unusual, affecting only children with a high level of magical power. It was not contagious, and once contracted, it granted a form of immunity. The sudden onset, however, was dangerous. High fevers could weaken the immune system, and complications could be fatal. Lisha would need at least 2 to 3 weeks of rest. Len assured them not to worry, emphasizing that they should take the time necessary for her full recovery. Over the following days, her condition gradually stabilized. 3 days later, a woman arrived at the house with Lisha, letting her know that Len was coming. When Len entered, he noticed Lisha's cheeks were still flushed. She lowered her head and apologized, explaining that she had come to the village on her own and had fallen ill almost immediately. She added that Len had ended up taking care of her. Len reassured her that it was not her fault, asking her to lift her head. Lisha shook her head, insisting that it was not acceptable. She explained that the journey had been intended to show Viscount Givens their determination, which was why they had planned to visit more villages than usual. Even with limited influence, she had hoped to demonstrate the unity of the Clausel family through her presence. Her frustration was quiet but palpable. Len observed her in silence, noting that at her age, Lisha was already deeply aware of her position and responsibilities. Lisha admitted that in the end, she had been unable to accomplish anything. She confessed that she could not even defeat Len once, leaving her feeling like an irritating child. She feared that her failures were only tarnishing the reputation of her late mother. Len asked about her mother. Lisha explained that her mother had been overjoyed upon learning that she was the Saintess of White, often saying that she would accomplish great things. Even on the day her mother passed away from illness, those words remained. Lisha had never seen her mother in life or heard her voice, only through portraits, but whenever she wore her mother's outfit in battle, she felt as if her mother were cheering her on. She added that it was said to be the same outfit her mother had worn as a child. Len listened quietly, realizing it was a cherished memento. He had not known this before. Lisha admitted that she had wanted to meet everyone's expectations, but her efforts had fallen short. She then announced that this would be her last visit to the village. The words left Len in shock. She mentioned that she had heard of Len's refusal of the Viscount Givens' invitation to the Imperial Cadet Academy. She acknowledged the lengths that Len and his father had gone to demonstrate their loyalty to Clausel and expressed that she could no longer act like a spoiled child. She had already spoken to Weiss and apologized for the trouble she had caused Len's family. She expressed sincere gratitude for all the kindness Len had shown her. Len observed her quietly. In contrast to his own burdens and secrets, Lisha was nothing but pure. He wondered to himself if this farewell was truly the end. Lisha explained that she needed to write a letter to her father and asked if she could borrow some ink later, having run out during the journey. Len agreed and indicated that the stationery was inside the box on the desk, telling her to use it freely. Lisha paused at the mention of the desk and questioned it. Len clarified that the room was actually his, and that he had been in the middle of cleaning the guest room when Lisha arrived. Lisha acknowledged this and remarked that she seemed to have caused Len nothing but trouble. Len immediately denied that this was the case. After that, Len fell silent for a moment before asking if she could bring a fire-lighting magic tool the next time she came, explaining that even a spare would be fine. Lisha was unsure what he meant, and Len added that having a fire-lighting tool within the domain would be convenient. Lisha responded by stating that this would be her last visit. Len clarified that he was referring to when she visited again. Lisha then pressed him to listen, reiterating that she would not come anymore because she kept causing him trouble. She added that Len had been avoiding her, including their sparring sessions. Len explained that if someone suddenly demanded a sparring match, anyone would naturally be confused, and he sought Lisha's agreement on that point. He then stated that if Lisha gave him advance notice from now on, it would be fine. As long as she was within the village, he could spar with her. Lisha was taken aback by his response. Len stated that he did not want her condition to worsen, so he would take his leave, and that they could have a proper conversation once she was feeling better. With that, he exited the room. Lisha was left without words. Outside, Len questioned his own behavior, unsure of what he had been saying. Alone, Lisha wondered whether Len had been telling the truth. She questioned if she was truly welcome to return. As she lay there, she noticed that her headache had already begun to subside. She slowly got up, deciding to write a letter to her father while she still had some energy. Opening the drawer, she checked the box she had seen earlier, wondering if the ink was inside. When she opened it, she found paper instead. As she read it, she realized it was the letter she herself had written. Her memory returned to Weiss's comment about how the letter looked like a love letter. Her hand began to tremble. She questioned why the letter was in Len's room. She had believed it was lost. She wondered where Len had found it, and concluded that he must have already read it. Lisha dropped to her knees, overwhelmed, tears falling as she denied the conclusion she feared. She convinced herself that the letter was not a love letter, that she had simply been overly enthusiastic when she wrote it. She reassured herself that it was not as if she harbored feelings for Len. He was merely strong and possessed a likable character, nothing more. Gradually, she calmed down. Her thoughts shifted to why Len had kept the letter as if it were something precious. She felt that he should have simply thrown it away. Carefully, she placed the letter back inside the box. She then lay back down on the bed. As she rested, her thoughts lingered on Len, and she wondered what had gone through his mind after reading the letter. The next day, at Lisha's request, Weiss and the others chose to assist with hunting and carpentry around the domain. Weiss explained to the Ashtons that they felt obligated to help in return for the hospitality they had received. Sir Roy agreed to the arrangement. He headed into the forest with Weiss and his group, while assigning Len to handle the house repairs. Len accepted without hesitation. Milieu decided to visit Granny Rig to obtain medicine. One of the knights asked Len about the location of the repair materials, and Len directed him to the storage box near the suspension bridge. As Lisha continued to recover, everyone believed that another week would be sufficient for her to fully recuperate. If everything proceeded smoothly, they would be able to return to Clausel. Just as that thought settled, rain suddenly began to fall, accompanied by thick fog, forcing them to take a short break. While resting beneath a tree, Len caught an unfamiliar scent and asked another knight if he noticed it as well. To Len, it resembled the smell of a field after a controlled burn, but the knight could not discern it through the damp scent of wet vegetation. Len suspected the source was coming from the direction of the house. Without another word, he broke into a sprint. He froze in shock when the house came into view, engulfed in flames. Nearby, two knights lay motionless on the ground. One had suffered severe bite wounds, leading Len to suspect the work of a monster. The realization struck him that Lisha was still inside. He rushed toward the burning building. Inside, he found the knights who had remained behind to guard the house, all of them already slain. He questioned whether this attack had been anticipated, whether the enemy had taken advantage of a brief lapse in vigilance. Then a cloaked figure entered his sight, accompanied by two dragon-like creatures. Len recognized them immediately as mana-eaters, formidable D-rank monsters, and felt a sharp shock run through him. Spotting Lisha, he moved to reach her. The cloaked figure addressed him, identifying him as Len Ashton. Len attempted to drive the intruder away from her. Suddenly, something went wrong. Len felt his strength drain away as his vision warped and blurred. He collapsed to his knees, unable to muster any power. The cloaked man revealed the cause. It was incense, potent enough to put even a dragon into deep sleep for several days. Len sensed that the situation was dire as his consciousness continued to fade. After an unknown amount of time, he eventually awoke. His hands and feet were bound, and as his vision adjusted, he took in his surroundings, unsure of where he had been taken. Beside him lay Lisha, restrained in the same manner. Len turned his attention to her condition. Lisha remained unconscious, but he felt a brief sense of relief upon confirming that she was still breathing. The cloaked man observed that Len had already regained consciousness, remarking that several days of sleep should have been sufficient. He warned Len to remain compliant if he wished to avoid harm, urging him to simply endure a few more days without attempting anything reckless. The realization struck Len that 4 days had already passed. He questioned how far they had been taken from the village and for what purpose they had been kidnapped. As he assessed the situation, Len concluded that the man was likely a beast tamer, capable of summoning and controlling monsters. The fact that he commanded 2 D-rank mana-eaters made it clear that this was not an opponent Len could confront without caution. His attention returned to Lisha. He recognized that her condition was the most pressing concern, and that prolonged captivity would only worsen it. If this continued, her life would be in danger. Len understood that he could not allow her to die here. With that resolve firmly set, he steeled himself, determined that he would save her. Len dreamed of another life. In that dream, Len Ashton lacked the courage to gather herbs, and because of that hesitation, he watched his father fall while fighting the chief Wolven. His father died before his eyes. After his father's death, the village was attacked by an unknown force, and many lives were lost. Len called out for his mother, overwhelmed by regret. He had promised to protect her, yet he failed. In the midst of the devastation, Lisha appeared with a group of knights and saved the village. Her presence matched the image of a true saintess. She healed his mother. As the scene unfolded, Len questioned whether this vision reflected the past described in the legend of the 7 heroes. In the present, still bound and restrained, Len reflected on the dream and questioned whether his encounter with Lisha had originally been meant to unfold that way. He could not understand why he dreamed of it, but one thing was clear: they did not seem to share a hostile relationship. That only deepened his confusion over why he had taken Lisha's life, and whether there had been a reason he could no longer remember. As the carriage continued along the road, Len noticed it had stopped. The hooded figure stepped down, opened the carriage door, and handed them water and food. Len attempted to protest the restraints, but the response was firm and dismissive. He was reminded that potions and herbs had already been provided over the past days, and that no further leniency would be given. Any attempt to raise his voice was meaningless, as the magic tool in use ensured that sounds from inside the carriage reached no one but the hooded figure alone. The hooded man closed the carriage and rested nearby. Inside, Len worked carefully. He opened the water with his mouth, passed it to Lisha, and gently poured some into her mouth. Night fell, and the surroundings grew quiet. Len waited for the right moment. When the time came, he summoned the demon sword of metal into his hand. The blade cut through the chain binding him with ease. Len noted its sharpness as the broken links fell away. He guided the sword's tip toward the lock on the carriage door from the inside and forced it open. With no delay, he lifted Lisha and moved to escape. A flying monster above noticed their movement, descended rapidly, and landed nearby. Len turned back and destroyed the carriage with the metal sword. The noise carried through the forest and stirred the hooded man from his rest. Len hurled the metal sword toward him. The attack was avoided, leaving the hooded man startled and uncertain about the weapon's origin. One of the embedded gems came loose as the sword struck a tree where a horse had been tied. The impact severed the bindings and the horse broke free. Len immediately summoned the demon sword of wood. Natural magic surged forth, binding the approaching monster in vines and thick grass. The same magic spread toward the hooded man, entangling him as well. The nature of the spell was recognized too late. The loosened gem was carried along the vines, and Len retrieved it with his sword. Still holding Lisha, Len leapt onto the freed horse. As the pursuit was about to continue, Len summoned the demon sword of banditry and used its power to strip the hooded man of his staff in a single motion. The hooded man hesitated in confusion, unable to grasp the situation unfolding before him. Ahead, the horse resisted Len's control, refusing to move smoothly as they rode. Len struggled to steady it, urging it to respond as they pressed forward. Another flying mana eater closed in from above. As it descended, the horse lashed out with a powerful kick, striking the creature midair. The impact forced it back, and the horse surged forward, carrying them farther from danger. Behind them, the hooded man broke free from the binding vines. He acknowledged the power he had witnessed, but showed no intention of giving up the pursuit. Marks spread along both of his arms as he extended them outward and invoked his magic. The forest reacted immediately. Monsters emerged from all directions, drawn together and driven forward in a single wave toward Len. Len quickly understood what was happening. The hooded man was gathering the creatures of the forest. The scope of the control became clear to him as well. Only those weaker than the caster were being compelled to obey, revealing the nature and limit of that ability. Len summoned the demon sword of metal once more and cut down the monsters that closed in nearby, clearing a narrow path through the chaos. As distance grew between them and the larger swarm, another flying mana eater appeared overhead. Flames rained down toward them, scorching the ground behind as they narrowly escaped. Far to the north, in the town of Clausel, Lisha's disappearance reached her family. Her father, Lizard Clausel, reacted in shock at the news that his daughter had been taken. Before him, Weiss lowered his head and accepted responsibility for the failure. He acknowledged the fear and losses that followed, and offered to bear any punishment meant for the fallen men. He pressed for more time, determined to recover the young lady. Lizard remained silent for a long moment. He closed his eyes and bowed his head, making it clear that Weiss's loyalty was never in doubt. The decision that led to this outcome had been Lisha's own, and for that reason, Lizard could not place the blame on Weiss alone. Lizard moved without hesitation. He ordered immediate action, directing Weiss to establish contact with the imperial capital. Their allied nobles had to be informed, and the emperor himself could not be kept in the dark about what had occurred. Before preparations could proceed, a man hurried into the room with an urgent report. Visitors from the imperial capital had arrived. The timing caught Lizard off guard, and he went to meet them at once. One of the visitors stepped forward and identified himself. He stated that they had come on behalf of the Minister of Justice. Lizard was informed that he was now under official scrutiny for conspicuous negligence in his administration. That negligence, they claimed, had led to the spread of monster-related harm into the neighboring territory ruled by Viscount Givens. After that night in the forest, Len and Lisha managed to escape and reach safety. Len helps Lisha rest beneath a tree and gives her a medicinal herb, explaining its bitterness and its effect in reducing fever. Lisha eats it, the bitterness immediately showing on her face. Len then offers water and she drinks. They continue their journey by crossing rivers and traveling through mountain paths, with Len carrying Lisha when her strength falters. As time passes, her condition steadily improves. Len observes that her fever has already subsided, and Lisha agrees. She asks where he obtained the herbs. Len explains that he traded monster materials he had gathered in a village forest they passed 3 days earlier. Along with the medicine, he had also secured travel supplies. Lisha thanks him, and Len responds simply, dismissing the need for gratitude. Not long after, Lisha realizes that they have reached the outskirts of Viscount Givens' territory. When Len asks how she knows, Lisha points out the Balder Mountains. She explains that seeing them allows one to roughly determine their location, and from here, she can guide their route. Len acknowledges the site of the Balder Mountains, recalling them as the place where the final battle of the Legend of the Seven Heroes was said to have taken place. He then asks how long it will take to reach Clausel from their current position. Lisha estimates the journey will take about 4 days and adds that they must first ensure the safety of Len's family. Len reassures her that there is no need to worry. He explains that his family was not home on the day of the attack and is likely sheltering somewhere safe. Confident they are unharmed, he asks Lisha not to concern herself over them. Len treats the journey as an opportunity to visit Clausel as well. He plans to meet the Baron, sightsee briefly, and then return. Hearing this, Lisha looks at him and quietly expresses her gratitude. That night, rain falls heavily over the forest. They take shelter in a nearby cave. Len builds a bonfire to keep warm and prepares a bird he has caught. Lisha notices and asks if it is meant for their meal, curious how he managed to catch it. Len explains that he used a vine trap while the bird was perched in a tree. Lisha then asks whether this was done with the help of the mysterious wooden sword. Len confirms it and adds that the true nature of its power must remain secret. Lisha reacts with mild displeasure at his secrecy. While checking their bag, Lisha pulls out a gem and asks what it is. She wonders if it is a magic tool, noting that it appears damaged. Len explains that he grabbed it while escaping from the beast tamer. When Lisha repeats her question about it being a magic tool, Len recalls that the beast tamer had mentioned using a magic tool to soundproof the carriage, and suggests that this gem is likely the same item. Lisha examines it more closely and agrees that it could be. She adds that, if necessary, it might serve as evidence. By morning, they resume their journey. Along the way, they find a river where they can rest and wash their clothes. The pace slows briefly as they take advantage of the clear water. Len wets a piece of cloth and gently washes Lisha's face. As he does, Lisha recalls his earlier remark about having a proper conversation once she felt better. Len notices that her face is still flushed. He places a hand against her forehead and confirms that the fever has already passed. Lisha immediately blushes and pulls away, insisting that she is fine and that it is nothing worth noting. Her thoughts drift to Glenn and what must have crossed his mind after reading her letter. Breaking the silence, Lisha asks Len if she can ask him something. She points out that he has been hiding something from her. Len reacts with confusion, asking for clarification. Lisha presses him, questioning why he kept it stored away. Len does not understand what she is referring to, and Lisha refuses to spell it out, assuming he should already know. Len searches his memory, trying to figure out what she could mean. He wonders if there was anything strange left in his room that might have drawn her attention. His thoughts shift to a past conversation with his mother, who once questioned why he was collecting magic stones, pointing out that empty ones were nearly worthless. Len had explained that he was not collecting them for value, only because they looked interesting to him. His mother had laughed it off, saying it must run in the family, recalling how his father had been the same in his youth, always fascinated by swords and magic stones even during ordinary moments together. Len considers that Lisha may be referring to the magic stones. There are many of them in his room, gathered without purpose beyond interest. From her perspective, it could easily seem like a strange habit. He looks at Lisha and explains that ever since the first time he saw it, it has stayed on his mind. Lisha reacts with surprise, her face flushing as she repeats the phrase to herself, trying to understand what he means. Len confirms it. He admits that it is the only way he can describe it. Lisha briefly assumes that she herself has been what occupied his thoughts. She pushes back, saying it is unfair to bring something like that up so suddenly. Len shifts his explanation, saying that holding on to something purely out of curiosity is strange in its own way. Lisha responds that it is not particularly strange, and tells him to do whatever he wants with it. Len wonders if her discomfort comes from the fact that the stones came from inside monsters. He apologizes and explains that the reason he kept them was simply because they caught his interest. Lisha cuts him off, saying she understands and that he should stop repeating himself. Privately, she struggles with how she is supposed to respond when he puts it that way. As Len looks at her again, Lisha tells him to use her name. Len is confused at first, but she repeats herself, insisting that if he must address her, he should call her by name. Len agrees. Even so, the moment ends with the two of them realizing they are not quite on the same page. In a nearby village, Len brings out the body of a dead boar to trade. The elderly woman who receives him explains that she has no medicinal herbs to offer. Len accepts this without complaint, saying that having food alone will be enough. The woman asks where they are headed. Len explains that they are traveling without a fixed destination and have not yet decided where to go. She tells him that if they continue straight from here, they will eventually reach Clausel. Len asks if something is happening there. The woman answers that there is. According to an adventurer who passed through recently, the Baron of Clausel is soon to be punished, and the situation is bound to become eventful. Lisha reacts immediately, her eyes widening in shock as she demands to know why and what happened. The woman admits she does not know the details, only that rumors claim the Baron of Clausel instigated a monster attack against Viscount Given's territory. After hearing this, Len and Lisha hurry to depart. As they ride on, Lisha cannot accept the story. She is certain her father would never commit such an act. To her, the rumor is clearly fabricated, and the situation feels wrong no matter how she looks at it. In the northern city of Clausel, a horse-drawn carriage arrives, drawing the attention of those nearby. A man steps down as a knight greets him, stating that the moment has finally come. With control over Clausel, the influence of the hero faction will expand without question. The man is revealed to be Viscount Given. He declares that for Leomel to rise from its decline, the Clausels must first be brought down. The two forces stood across from each other in the trial court. The man announced that, based on the arguments presented, the imperial court would review the matter carefully in accordance with the great imperial law. The official decision would be delivered tomorrow morning, at the same hour as today's hearing had begun. On the other side, Baron Clausel expressed confidence that the outcome was already decided. He predicted that within a few days he would be transported to the imperial city and face punishment. Weiss countered with the possibility of filing an appeal, taking the case to a trial in the imperial city, or requesting a goodwill trial if necessary. The Baron dismissed these options as futile, observing Viscount Given's composed expression. Givens appeared prepared to secure victory by any means. Interference seemed likely even before the trial officially began. Clausel found Given's approach unusual for someone of high nobility, noting its forceful nature. He questioned whether this was truly a simple factional dispute. That night, deep in the forest, Lisha and Len rested. Len worried about how to protect everyone. If events continued unchecked, Baron Clausel could be falsely accused and stripped of power. Lisha pointed out that the neutral, high-ranking nobles could not be counted on. Lisha stirred and asked if Len was having trouble sleeping. He admitted he was, weighed down by thoughts of what could be done. Lisha suggested he could afford to be more casual. Len looked at her, confused by the unexpected remark. Lisha explained that it would be easier for Len to speak freely if she simply called him by his name. She said they would set out as soon as dawn broke. Sleep was impossible under the circumstances. They needed to return to Clausel quickly to testify about the kidnapping. Len fell silent, thinking about how many people would believe their story. Ideally, they would need evidence linking the kidnapping to Viscount Givens. Lisha agreed, acknowledging that time was short and that finding proof was urgent. At first light, they resumed their journey. Lisha noted that they were nearly there. Their route had strayed far from the main road, but once they passed through the forest and over the hills, Clausel would come into view. Len asked if that meant they were safe. Lisha assured him that knights from the Clausel house should be stationed nearby. A horse appeared on the path ahead, carrying a knight they recognized as one of Viscount Given's. The knight expressed relief at finding them and explained that Baron Clausel had requested their search. Lisha and Len hesitated as more knights arrived, surrounding them. The leading knight insisted they leave immediately, offering to escort them to a secure location. Lisha whispered to Len to leave it to her, sensing possible danger, and he responded that he understood and was ready for whatever came next. The leading knight asked what they had been discussing. Lisha explained that whether or not they would accompany the knights depended on the explanation he could provide. She produced the magical device and held it out, asking if he recognized it. The knight's eyes widened, but he admitted he did not and asked what it was. Lisha noted the brief twitch of his eyebrows before explaining that it was a magical device taken from the person who had kidnapped them. The knight responded calmly, but Lisha sensed a lack of interest. He insisted that he would very much like to take the device as evidence. Lisha refused, stating that the Merchants' Guild would examine it first. The knight's expression shifted to concern. She elaborated that the guild could trace the device to its previous owner or the merchant who sold it, and any information could prove valuable. The knight argued that this was impossible, citing the vast number of magical devices in the Leomel Empire. Lisha acknowledged it, but emphasized that this device was rare and valuable, unlike common devices circulating in the market. She had connections with the guild leader in the capital, and was confident they could uncover something. The knight grew anxious. Lisha added that once the investigation concluded, it would be clear whether the device had been stolen or intentionally given. If it was the latter, the giver would have to answer for it in court. The leading knight's composure faltered, his nervousness apparent. Lisha pressed the point, stating that whoever had given them the device was essentially trying to defame them, and asked the leading knight if he disagreed. The other knights fell silent. The leading knight, tension in his voice, insisted that the matter was serious and urged them to entrust the device to him. Lisha dismissed him, saying she had no obligation to hand it over. The village itself, she reminded him, was within their jurisdiction. The knight's frustration mounted, but Lisha refused to be swayed. She declared that she had no desire to be protected by knights who could not understand reason, and ended the discussion. As Lisha and Len prepared to leave, the leading knight shouted that they needed an escort. Lisha refused, insisting they were almost in the city and that she trusted no one but Len for protection. Anger flared across the knight's face. He drew his sword, declaring that they must accompany him. The knight struck. Lisha screamed Len's name, and he told her to leave it to him. In the nick of time, Len summoned the demon metal sword and blocked the blow. He struck the knight's armored hand, forcing him to grab Len's cloak. Lisha reacted immediately, forming holy magic around the knight's hand. She noted that now they had a reason to bring Viscount Givens to court. Releasing the magic, the knight was thrown from his horse. The leading knight commanded his men to stop them, but Len summoned the demon sword of wood, using natural magic to entangle the knights. Lisha and Len took off, running with speed. The leading knight rose, cursed, and ordered a pursuit. He emphasized capturing them alive at any cost, intending to report the incident directly to Viscount Givens.